just a little while ago, I spoke with the former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He's dealt with Vladimir Putin on the world stage over the years. He's also one of the first world leaders to visit President Zelensky in Kyiv soon after the Russian invasion, and has made multiple trips to Ukraine since then. Prime Minister, thank you so much for joining us. Let's get right to the questions. Thank you. In Vladimir Putin's twisted, totally false narrative that we heard earlier today, it's the West that started this war and is trying to destroy Russia. How do you read his mindset going into year 2 of this war?
I think he's pretty desperate. What he said is, of course, ludicrous. The West had absolutely no role in starting this war. This was a war of choice that he initiated. It was his vicious and unprovoked attack on Ukraine February the 24th last year that started this war. Ukraine was never going to join NATO in any realistic timescale. He knew that. He did this for his own, principally for his own domestic reasons, and he wants to rebuild the Soviet Empire. He is currently failing in all his key strategic objectives. Wolf, he failed to get Kyiv, he failed to conquer Kharkiv, and he's failed in Kherson as well. But the war is very bitter, very bloody, and he needs to be pushed out of the whole of Ukraine, and we need to give the Ukrainians the help they need now.
Very strong words from you. I know you dealt with Putin, and I remember right at the start of this brutal invasion, you were then Prime Minister, and you made an extraordinary claim to the BBC that Putin almost jokingly suggested that he could take you out with a missile. You remember that. What can you tell us about that exchange?
Yeah, well, this is in the course of one of the conversations I had with Vladimir Putin in the run-up to his invasion. And what he's trying to do is to creep us out. And as he did in his speech today, to try to introduce into the conversation continually the idea of nuclear missile exchanges, the unpredictable consequences of this becoming a nuclear conflict. It's very, very important we don't allow him to do that. We don't allow him to frame this conflict as some kind of nuclear standoff between nuclear-armed NATO and a nuclear-armed Russia. This is about the invasion of an innocent European country by conventional means, and us, friends and supporters of Ukraine, particularly the United States of America, the UK, and many others, helping the Ukrainians to defend themselves by conventional means. We mustn't allow Putin to take us down that nuclear rabbit hole, if you like.
How powerful was it, Prime Minister, for the President of the United States to make that secret trip, risky, to Kyiv on the eve of the anniversary of the start of the war? You yourself have made that same trip several times.
I think it's fantastic that Joe Biden did that. I congratulate him. And I think, as far as I understand the matter, this was one of the first times in history that the President of the United States has gone outside an area where the U.S. Air Force can exercise direct control. I've done that trip several times. I know that terrain very well. And every time you bump over the points, and it's a very, very bumpy track, you keep thinking you're being hit by a missile. So this was certainly how I felt the first time I did it. It was exactly the right thing for the president to do. I applaud him, and I thought his speech was excellent.
As you probably know, there are some critics here in the United States on the fringes, shall we say, who accuse President Biden of prioritizing this war over domestic problems, and Republicans like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis questioning what he calls the blank check to Ukraine. Is that something that worries the UK right now, worries our Western allies?
Let me be absolutely clear with everybody. The investment in supporting the Ukrainians is a massive economy if it helps protect our peace in the long term. If we fail to expunge Putin from Ukraine, if the Ukrainians lose, then the jeopardy for the whole Euro-Atlantic security area, for the United States, is all the greater. And of course, the risks of read across in the Pacific are all the greater. By helping the Ukrainians to win, by decisive action, by giving them what they need now, and I'm talking about more tanks, and more planes, and more long-range artillery, I believe that the Ukrainians can and will win, and that will be of decisive importance for Western security. And my message to or my American friends is this will save us all money in the long run.
Because I know you say it's time for the UK to cut to the chase and provide Ukraine with fighter jets. If the UK takes that step, how long would it actually take, though, to complete the training, to deliver the aircraft, to actually make a real difference out there on the battlefield?
Well, Wolf, this thing's been going on for a year. And we all know that in the course of the last year, we've eventually, having exhausted all the other options, we've given the Ukrainians what they need, whether it's the anti-tank missiles or whether it's the HIMARS systems or whether it's now tanks. We always, sooner or later, come to the right answer and give the Ukrainians what they need. Well, if it's going to be sooner or later, if that's the choice, then let's give them what they need sooner, because that is the humane, the compassionate thing. Finish this war as quickly as possible, minimize the bloodshed, minimize the suffering, minimize the expense. And if we'd started giving them aeroplanes a year ago, we'd be that much further down the track. I don't believe it will take that long to train people up to fly either Typhoons or F-16s or Gripens or whatever we decide we're able to give them. But let's get on with it. And if it's a question of sending people who can do the avionics and the ground stuff as well, training people to do that, then let's train them as well.
So can I assume, Prime Minister, that you're calling on President Biden and the U.S. to start providing these F-16 jets to Ukraine?
That is correct. And I think that the logic of what we've been doing is to continue to give the Ukrainians what they need to protect themselves, to protect their hearth and home, to protect their families, to protect their country, and to expel Putin from the areas that he has conquered, at least since the invasion of February the 24th last year. And in my view, now I think the Ukrainians have an ever stronger case for getting him out back to the 1991 borders. That's the Ukraine that people voted for in 1991. That's the country to which they're entitled.
I know, Prime Minister, you share the U.S. concerns when it comes to China's support for Russia's war. What changed China's calculation on possibly starting to provide lethal weapons to Russia?
Well, look, I mean, everybody see what Tony Blinken said about China. I am concerned about that. I think it would be very wrong of the Chinese to support Vladimir Putin in that way. Why would Beijing now want to be contaminated by what Putin is doing? Why would they want to be associated with this gangsterism and adventurism? I think it would be a disaster for China. And I hope very much that it won't prove to be true. But if it is true, it shows all the more clearly why we must now accelerate our support for Ukraine and double down on giving them what they need.